Today's episode is being brought to you by Untarnished, Reclaiming My Self-Worth Through God's Untainted Love. Untarnished is a compelling memoir and simple self-help guide where I give you the inside scoop on my personal journey and provide coping strategies to help others heal from their past. You can download a free copy of the first chapter by heading over to donnasherie.com/untarnished. You're listening to Untarnished Moments, the podcast that helps you shine through life challenges and move past self-defeat into victory. I'm your host, Donna Cherie. Let's get into today's show. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Untarnished Moments. Thank you so much for tuning in. And if you've been enjoying the show, be sure to subscribe, rate, and review on iTunes. And also share with somebody you know who could benefit from just the information that has been on the shows. And if you believe that is something you think people need to know, share it with someone. So today I have a guest. Her name is Sabrina Carter-Anderson from Black and Traveled. Sabrina, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So if the audience is meeting you for the first time, tell them who you are and what you do.
So you already said my name. It's Sabrina. And I am the founder and owner of Black and Traveled. It is a luxury boutique travel agency, and we create bucket list travel experiences that really try to empower people to expand their worldview. And by doing that, changing their perspective of how they fit in it. I truly believe that there is a transformation that happens the further out that you go past your boundaries. And traveling is one of those great ways to really see how you could be a little bit different. You know, we're not always treated the same way we're treated here. So I really wanted a space that's safe for my community in particular to travel in, because, you know, nobody experiences things the way we experience in travel. And so that we can just explore further than we've ever thought possible.
And how did you get started with this?
So it's actually something that came up. I was on a group trip. It was my first group trip ever being managed by someone else. And I was in Thailand. It was me and my best friend. And we were like, we want to go somewhere different. We want to spread our wings. We want to get out there. So we joined this group trip and didn't really have a ton of information about it. It just had started out about 2018, and we went to Thailand. And it was from beginning to end, just not put together well. She had told us we'd be able to do all of these things. And we met our first day with our tour guide, and she goes, "You can't do any of this." So we had to rejigger the whole schedule. We got ourselves together. I was able to put together a good plan. Luckily, there was only 3 of us, me, my best friend, and a solo traveler who I now take with me all the time in my life. Her name is Kiki. And we were able to kind of salvage it. And I was talking to another group of travelers. They were from Nigeria. And I met their owner, the owner of the travel agency. And he goes, "You just kind of replanned everything on the fly." I was like, "Yeah." He goes, "You should do this." And I heard him and I was like, "Yeah, I don't know." He's like, "You are in project management," which was what I was doing for a living, was advertising and project management. He goes, "It would work perfectly." And I was on the fence and I was like, "Yeah, it could, but you know, you're in a job and you're comfortable and there's no reason to really rock the boat." And so we kind of go about our day, and I'm posting, and I get all of my friends, like people I have, friends of friends, reaching out, and they're like, "Oh, how's Thailand? How did you get there? Like, how did you know you'd be safe? What language do they speak? Like, how are you communicating with people?" And for me, it was natural. We figured it out. We've been traveling for a good 10 years at that point. So we'll just figure it out. But I realized that as a community, the Black and Brown community, we just don't travel past our boundaries. So some of the questions I was getting seemed like it would be something people would know. But if you really don't go past maybe 4 or 5 hours from your home base, you would have no idea. And so I started leaning a little bit more toward the travel. And then we went to the Phi Phi Islands. And I don't know if you know anything about Thailand, but it's the boats and the blue water. And I insisted. I was like, I did not come all the way here, 22 hours, to not see the blue water. So I booked us all flights and we went. And we get to this little eco lounge, and this little girl comes running up to me, and she's rubbing her arm and tapping and looking at me, and she's really excited. I have no idea what she's saying. And her mother explains to me that she had not seen anyone who was brown in her life other than her family. Her family lived on the island. They never left the island. They worked at the resort, and that is all she's ever known. So she was ridiculously excited to see other brown people because she wasn't entirely sure they existed. And that was the moment I was like, okay, not only is it transformative for me, because that was the moment I was like, I made this little girl's life and I'm just being me. I'm just existing. And when I get home, my presence in like the grocery store aggravates people and just existing. So not only can I change how I view things, but I can change other people's lives as well just by enjoying travel, which is something that is fun to begin with. And that immediately was like, okay, I got it. I'm going to do it. And I came home, built Black and Traveled, and that's where it started, and that's where we're headed. We're just keep expanding, keep growing our list of trips we're going to. We'll keep seeing the world and taking people with us.
That's cool. And what came to your mind too, like when that little girl said that? I mean, because I think if I was in your shoes, that would have hit me to my core. When I understood.
Oh, it rocked me. You don't really think about it. Like you don't. I mean, if you come from a big family, I have a medium-sized family. I know my friends who have like huge families. You don't really think about your family in a way of like not seeing other people outside of your family. So just when her mom said, well, our whole family lives on this island and works here, I was like, wait, you guys just live here, work here. That's all you do. They don't ever really leave the island. And so she had literally never seen anyone that wasn't her relative that looked like her. And I literally was speechless. You don't even know what to do with it, because when you think about it, I couldn't imagine not seeing someone else who looks like me and not having access to seeing someone who looks like me. It's like the purest representation of, representation matters. It was unbelievable. I kind of just stood there.
Yeah. So when you got home and you birthed Black and Traveled, what were some of the steps that you took to do that?
So that was in April, created the name. I come from an advertising and marketing background. So for me, building the foundation of the business came pretty natural. I, created the name, secured all of my socials, website, did all of that. And I really just went into planning mode, just figuring out so what does one do? How do people do this? Because I had never used a travel agent. We had started traveling really, really early on and never really needed any help. We were fans of figuring it out. I don't know if this generation understands what it's like to not have the internet really readily accessible, to not have cell phones, and to print out your directions to get somewhere, but that's how we traveled. And so I think the ingenuity of figuring it out was built in us. So trying to figure out why people would use a travel agent, what makes people use a travel agent, what travel agents did, how did travel agents make money? Because for me, I was like, I want to do this. If I'm going to do this. And it really hit me when I got home that I talked to my brother and he's like, I've never been anywhere out in New Jersey. And I'm like, how are we related? Mm-hmm. And as I started talking to people, I'm like, wait, even outside of my immediate circle, people really don't go anywhere. They go to your normal Florida and within the States, which is fine. But when I asked about traveling internationally, the response was very much oh, whoa, no, I don't. That's really far. And I'm like, Jamaica is 4 hours away. And it was flabbergasted. They had no idea it was that close. And so I wanted to make sure I was doing this and I was doing it well. I did a lot of competitive analysis. So just looking at who else was out there, seeing what being a Black owned business even meant. That's really hard to find. Trying to find a mentor in travel was really hard to find. I, amazingly enough, lucked up on finding one of the best travel mentors ever. And she gives of herself as much as possible, which I can appreciate. She was 14 years in the business and literally is I made my mistakes, so you don't have to make them. And finding her was probably one of the best things that could happen for me, because it helped me really build this a bit faster than I would have been doing it on my own.
Yeah, and if you don't mind me asking, how did you find her?
So I was searching around on Facebook and looking up like travel agents and travel groups, and a lot of things were pushing me toward MLMs, which are travel agency hosts that have agents under them, which there's nothing wrong with that. But for me, I didn't feel like that was going to be right. I was trying to figure out how I was ever going to quit my job, because if you ever worked anything in advertising, saw Mad Men, you really do give a lot of your time to your job. And I'm like, I'm working hard for these people and I want to work hard for myself. So I got to figure out how to make this happen. And as I'm searching, I found a class and I was like, oh, okay, this person has like a class on being a travel agent. And when I took her class, I was amazed at how much information she was just willing to give. And her thing is like, I'll give you the information. We'll answer questions, but this is going to take work on your end. So you can collect all the information you want, but at some point you're going to have to execute. And she was speaking to like the project manager and me. I'm like, oh, you give me a to-do list, I'm ready. So I just was searching around and lucked out finding her. A lot of the travel agents who were in other like larger travel host groups had also been like kind of pushing and finding her information as well. So I think in doing that and finding and being in certain groups, I just found her. It's much easier to find her now because she's doing amazing things. She just hit her 8 figures. So I was super proud of her.
And this is a woman of color?
Yes, her name is Shanteria Early. She is absolutely amazing. She runs the Travel Divas. She is beyond great at what she does. But woman of color, doesn't matter who you are. If you are wanting to get into travel, she will absolutely help. She has amazing classes. Like I still take some of her stuff. I'm still on her email list. But she really got me into wanting to know more about mentorship and coaching and business coaching. I'm always a fan of everyone needs a coach.
Yeah.
Like the best players in the world have a coach. You need one too. So that really got me kind of on my path to where I am now, which is really focusing on mentorship and business coaching and being around like-minded people in the business sense.
Okay. And so once you created Black in Travel, you gathered your information, you found a mentor. What trips have, spurred out of that since?
So our first trip was 2018. So it took me, let's see, I was incorporated. I did the LLC. That was in October of 2018. So I did it well within that year. And I put my first trip up, I think it might have been the end of that year, on my website that I built myself. And we went to Cuba in 2019. And I'm actually really excited I got to go to Cuba before everything happened and they stopped communicating with Cuba. I caught it right at the tail end of the Obama administration, and it was fantastic. To this day, the people who went on that trip with me, we still talk about that trip. There's only 10 of us. It was a mixture of people I didn't know and people I did know. I was very upfront, like, guys, this is my first trip. I've never been to Cuba, but this is where I wanted to go. And if you guys will come with me and enjoy this time with me, well, I'll figure it out. And we had an amazing, amazing time. And I kept it small because I didn't want to take on more than I can chew. Taking someone's money for me is a huge responsibility. And I didn't want to do it lightly. So I did a ton of planning. I did a ton of researching, found a really great house. And it was a great time. And then the pandemic happened. And it was like, nobody's going nowhere. And we were like, oh, okay. Guess we'll all sit tight. But that was my first trip. And it was really good. I was really excited with how it came out.
Okay, cool. And then when it comes to offering education or maybe even the importance of like traveling, why people should travel, and especially Black and Brown people, what is your approach to that?
I've actually had to come into a different sort of way of doing it. It's been a little hard because sometimes people are just very stuck in what they know. And so combating that mindset of, but this is what I want to do, or the stigmas around certain countries and I don't really need to go that far. I think what really helped the education part, at least from my standpoint, was the pandemic, because we were all in the house. And during that time, I mean, between George Floyd and everything that was happening, our TVs were on all the time. And we had such a large expat group of people leave, Black and brown people actually leave the US and move abroad. So it started this conversation that I think previously to that, we weren't having about being Black in America. We weren't having it about being Black and brown in America. We were having it, but not really in a way that felt like anybody and everyone can do something about it, or you can go outside and find someplace else to be and live a better life and live a happier life. Like there's something more than just what's here. And so trying to say that on my little platform just felt like I was yelling into the abyss. Nobody was hearing me. So now I feel like there's a lot more openness around like, oh, you can go to, Colombia, you can live in Mexico, you can live abroad and still have a community. You don't lose them. And in a lot of places, me and my friend went to Mexico for her daughter's spring break. And you literally could walk down the street, we were in Playa, and run into a Black person. And it was amazing. And it's like a family reunion. Like you see your cousins out in the street, like, hey, we don't know each other, but we're talking to each other like we know each other. And I'm like, so how is it? And they're like, oh, I can get my nails done. I get my hair braided. Like they don't skip a beat. What they do skip is these bills. And it's high cost of living. That is what they are missing, and they love it. And so I think having more people be open about their expatriation, if that's a word, and how they're having it eases my way into having a conversation about, you don't have to have those limitations of, being scared, or the limitation of having no friends who want to go with you. That's a huge thing. People don't have someone else to go with them. I was lucky enough, there were 7 of us at the time, and all friends. And at any given moment, I was traveling with at least 4 of them every year. It's just what we did. But not everybody has that. So now my big thing is I want to remove some of those limitations. I want to remove the limitations of fear. You don't have to be scared. My groups are very small. I keep them under 20 because I want there to be a place that people who are solo travelers can feel comfortable. I think a lot more people are open to solo travel. And that's removed a lot of boundaries for people because they didn't have anyone to go with. So I'm still working on the education part. I'm finding ways in that are fun. I'm finding ways in that are fit my personality. I can be kind of blunt at times, but I find ways to just use that to have the conversation we need to have. Everyone's a travel agent. Everyone doesn't need one until the pandemic comes and you can't get your money back. And then I get inbox emails about like, what do I do? I'm like, this is why you need a travel agent, because I don't even know how you bought your flight. Like, I have no idea what you did. So I can't tell you if you're in the right or not. I have no clue. So, but I'm really big on education because I don't care if you travel with me or not, as long as you're going. And that's huge. I teach people how to plan their own vacations.
Okay.
I have a seminar coming up actually this coming week on planning your dream vacation. I teach people how to budget for their dream vacation because it's not that we can't afford it. We're just not used to carving out money for it.
Yeah. When are you doing this?
My training is February 23rd. It's at 7:00 and it's planning your dream vacation. So we are going over 5 ways to start planning for like the best ways to plan for your dream vacation. It's how I plan all of my vacations and how I plan vacations for my clients.
Okay. And where are you teaching at on Zoom?
It's on Zoom. Yep.
Cool.
And I do a training every month.
Huh?
I do a training every month.
Okay. How can people sign up? They just need to go to your website or?
Yep, they go to my website. They can go to my Instagram, and right in the links list in my Instagram list, you can click the link and sign up.
Okay, great.
Yep.
Yeah, because I do, just thinking about my own experience, I traveled to, it wasn't super duper far, but back in 2016, I traveled to Canada by myself. And I thought that was like the coolest thing to go, even though it's a country right next door. But
yeah,
That was the first time I actually had been out of the US for the first time. And the fact that I went solo, and I had a friend who lived there, she was getting married at the time, but still, it opened up a lot of doors in my mind
Mm-hmm.
about like where I could go and what I could do.
That's just it. You might come home and do the same thing, but just unlocking that part of your brain that says, but there is more, changes even how you let people talk to you. Like there's things that I just don't put up with now because I'm like, I don't have to. I'm always threatening to leave the country. I am like one packed bag away from just moving my life to London. I'm out of here. But it just changes your perspective. And for me, I love that when people realize that, it then is something they pass on to their kids. Because now their children are able to understand that life is much larger. You're not just the street you grew up on. You're not just the school you went to, your neighborhood you are. Like you have the capability of going further than that if you want to. And sometimes you won't get that if everyone you know has not gone past their block, their 2-hour radius, there where you can go in a car. My niece just went to Paris for her 13th birthday, and that little girl is not clear that vacations are not synonymous with blue water. And she picked the vacation instead of a party at 13 years old. She's like, no, I'm going on vacation. We, matter of fact, owe her a trip to Thailand because we left her when we went to Thailand the first time, and she has not let us live it down since 2018. Every now and then she'll look at me and be like, you were supposed to take me to Thailand, right? I'm fully aware, little girl, but you also don't eat anything. So not time yet. But I owe her a trip to Thailand because we left her apparently.
Maybe for her 16th?
Yeah, we could swing it next year. This year it was a little hard with the vaccinations and everything else. I mean, we went to last November. I took a group, very small, maybe 7 of us, to Thailand, right after, like right before they really expanded the entry requirements. We went right as it opened. And I tell you what, they had it down. It was 30 minutes. You went through 7 stations. It took 30 minutes and you were out of the door. It was fantastic. But with all of that, it just didn't seem like the right time to take her. So we might go next year, depending on how it goes. Her birthday is at the end of the year. She's a New Year's Eve baby. So
Gotcha. So,
yeah.
what would you say are some of the benefits of somebody traveling outside of the country?
Enlightenment for me is huge. I think just seeing firsthand what things really look like. I just came back from Zanzibar in October, and to see something that looks gorgeous in pictures and then to be knocked on the head with the pictures do it no justice when you see it in person. I was speechless. Like to be somewhere where you see the pictures and you're like, oh, this is fantastic. This is magnificent. And you get there and you're like, it's even better. Like just to be able to see something firsthand. I always tell people, don't listen to someone else's review of a location. Sometimes you're going to have to go see it yourself because there's just something about being there. I think getting other perspectives is awesome. I have a vendor I use a ton in Jamaica, and the more I talk to him, the more I understand just, other countries' perspectives on the US. He has a very interesting one in that, his siblings live here and he built his business there and they call him for money, which seems very backwards when you think about it, but they were leaving to live the American dream and he stayed and built a business. His whole business is built on his own. So understanding that not everybody wants to come here, and it's okay if you are looking for a lifestyle that is more relaxed, that is, you have exactly what you need, and that's okay. I think sometimes we need to be told that it's okay to downsize. It's okay to just have what you need. There's nothing wrong with that. Like I chose the entrepreneur track, but not everybody's meant to own a business. Not everyone's meant to be their own boss. And that's okay too.
Yeah.
Feeling that confidence of being like, I can do anything I want to do, even if it's not the thing that everyone thinks you should be doing. Like I would love to solo travel. I keep finding people to go with. I was supposed to solo travel to Zanzibar, and at last minute I was like, hey, you want to go to Africa? And one of my coworkers was like, sure, I'll go. And she's obviously more than a coworker. She's definitely a friend. But she's like, yeah, I'll go. So I ended up not having to go by myself. But I think even with you going to Canada, I think it's just it gives you a different feeling of confidence in that I can do things. I can do anything I put my mind to.
Yeah, and for somebody who is, they might be a solo traveler, but like they want to get involved with the group, but they could be an introvert. How do you make people feel comfortable, or, once they do get together, or to like spread their wings and fly in a sense?
So I like to have things we do together and things we do that you can do apart. I think now there's a name. It's an ambivert, maybe. I'm very extroverted, but it takes me a little bit to get that way. So most people think that I'm an introvert and I'm not. But I recognize that introverts, they're that way because sometimes people exhaust them. And so I keep all my groups small because it makes it easier for solo travelers to get into the group. But two, we do things that are together, and then we do things that you could do apart. But every solo traveler that I have between me and my photographer, I always end up kind of taking them along if they haven't really found someone. But because the group is small, every solo traveler finds someone, some group, some not click because it's the wrong word, but there's usually like a twosome and a threesome and maybe a foursome. They always find someone that they kind of gravitate to, a group. And so when it's time to break off on your own, they're not really on their own. My favorite trip last year was our Greece trip, and there was maybe 15 of us, I think. And someone asked us if we were in a family reunion. And I was like, no. I had 4 solo travelers, I believe, on that trip. You wouldn't have known that we didn't know each other. Because with a small group, you get the time to learn each other. You get the time to talk. When we have our welcome dinner, we're all chit-chatting and everyone's comfortable enough to all sit down at the same table. It's a small enough group that if we can do 2 tables of 10, you can sit down and talk to someone next to you and you don't feel like you don't have a seat. I try to strategically, meet people where they are and say, hey, this person if I see someone who's not having a conversation, I'll pull someone else into the conversation and get them starting to know someone. So I understand introverts and I definitely understand solo travelers. I want to be one when I grow up. So, but I'm very conscious of it, which I think you have to be. I think when the groups get really big, and there's nothing wrong with going on a huge group trip that has like 40 people in it, but you lose that aspect of the smaller group and people getting to know each other.
So where are you headed next?
So the group is headed to Cuba in April. It'll be my first trip that I am actually not trip hosting. It is, I think if I didn't have the trip host I'm having, I would probably be way more nervous about it, but I have full faith in her. She has a background in traveling for work and corporate events. So I know she knows exactly what she's doing. I actually worked with an amazing company, Absolutely Cuba, who curates groups trips to Cuba. And I actually used her in particular. Her name is Danielle. I actually know her in real life because she cares about the Cuban people. There's a lot of rules and regulations as it comes to traveling to Cuba. And the biggest one is that you have to put money in the hands of the Cuban people. And she just cares immensely about them. But I did a trip with her in November. I got to meet her on the ground concierge. And I feel absolutely comfortable sending 12 people to Cuba on their own, not on their own. My photographer will be there. My trip host will be there. But I won't be there. So that'll be the first trip that I'm not going to be. I'll probably be on my phone, standing next to it, waiting for someone to call me and make sure everything's okay. Be like a proud mama, but
Yeah.
Apparently, so my business coaches tell me I can't do everything. I
That's
think they might be
true.
right. I think they might be right. So this is the first trip where, so that's the first trip that everyone is going on in Cuba. We have a very small group trip in May going to Greece, a small group trip in June going to Bali. I'll be on both of those. So that's the first half of the year.
And so if somebody does want to book travel with you, like how far in advance would they need to do it? Or is it based on like the trips that you've already organized for the year? How does that work?
So I like everything to be flexible. I built my business based on payment plans because for me, I can't save a thing except for Sephora points. And I even have a hard time like saving money for traveling. I see the money, it's over there. I know I have other things I want to get, and all of a sudden my vacation fund is gone. So I even pay myself in payment plans. But I built it based on payment plans. So there are still two 2020 23 trips open right now. If you're someone who's like, I have the money, I just don't know how to plan, then those might be great trips for you to go on because while the payments might be larger, if you have the funds to do it, awesome. But I've opened up all the 2024 trips currently right now are being booked. And those allow people anywhere from 10 to 18 payments to pay off your trips. Because I recognize that a $200 payment every month or a $300 payment every month is much easier to work into your budget than a $1,000 payment every month. So it really just depends on the person's budget, what trip they want to go on. And I do book, I rarely ever get people who book immediately. I am always pushing people to book calls with me so I can walk you through what the trip offers. It is luxury travel, so I do not participate in budget travel, mostly because you get what you pay for, and we're not going to like Miami. These aren't places that you would go traditionally again. I mean, I go to places all the time, but it's also what I do. But if you're going to go to Kenya, for instance, it's a destination call I just had last night. You're going to want to do all the things. You should want to experience as much as possible because when you really think about it, when's the next time you're going to Kenya? It's probably not going to be the next year. So I book a lot of calls. I like to walk people through the itineraries. I like to walk people through what their options are for payment plans because you can do them monthly. If you get paid bi-weekly, I'll break them down bi-weekly. I had someone who broke them down weekly because they got paid weekly. I was like, however you want to do these payments, they're up to you. Whatever makes it easier, as long as you're paying, because that's important. So, and then I do personal trip planning as well. I just had a call for a gentleman who wants to celebrate his birthday in Paris in September. So we kind of talk through what that looks like, what those offerings are, and we're going to book a call to set up his trip planning process for him in a small group of, I think, 5 or 6. So it depends. If you want to do group travel, there are 12 trips next year. There's still two trips open this year. And then if you are someone who wants to celebrate something, I just did 2 bachelorette parties. They are actually getting married to each other. And I did both of their bachelor parties and like a 65th birthday. So there's lots there that you could do. I always tell people plan for 12 to 15 months to pay off your trip. And that'll just give you flexibility. And you don't have to worry about budgeting or skimping or worrying about if you're going to have enough money to buy a souvenir while you're there. Just plan for a year of savings and you'll feel more confident going into your trip.
And just for clarification, you can do solo trips as well, like for personal planning ones?
Yeah. Because I recognize that people may want to travel, but they don't know how. Yeah. Where to go, where to look. There is a very interesting statistic. 80% of people who plan a trip to a destination spend 4 weeks doing research, and then they end up going nowhere.
I believe it. Because it's a lot you have to think about and where you're going. Yeah. And if you're not familiar with it, it's just, you could be here, there, everywhere. And then if you do decide to go through with the trip, and then it's not as good as you thought it would be. So,
yeah. Or if you're not even sure, like you'll get there and you're like, so what do I do now that I'm here?
Yeah.
But I saw that and I was like, that makes so much. It's like 50 site searches, 38 website reading, like reading 38 websites, and then like 12 reviews. And by that time, everyone's just tired and they end up sitting on the couch.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm supposed to be, and my mom has asked me several times to like plan a trip out of the country. And I'm like, I don't even know where to start. So, yeah.
And that's what I kind of focus on in my training a lot. I think people start at the wrong place. And everyone wants to start at the money. And I start at the experience because you end up kind of pigeonholing yourself if you're like, I have this much money and I want to go here. Like I had a client who told me, I want to spend $1,500 and I want to go to Dubai. I'm sorry. I'm
$200.
not going to be able to do that for you. I could get you to Dubai, but I don't know where you're going to sleep and I don't know what you're going to eat.
Right.
And that was just the end of the conversation because I didn't tell her what she wanted to hear. But if someone else sends you to Dubai for $1,500, they have not told you all of the information, as in you have no flight.
Yeah.
Because generally that's the pricing you're seeing is without the flight, which is completely okay. But I'm not entirely sure everyone recognizes that or even knows how much those flights cost.
Mhm.
So it's a hard place to start. It's just figuring like where do you want to go? What do you? There's so many places to go.
Yeah. It's a lot. And also, when you talk about like, having a luxurious travel experience, give us some examples of that, of, what you've done with the groups in the past, what that looked like.
Sure. So for me, luxury is not just the hotel you stay in, which I'm not going to lie to you, it is very important. But it's not just the hotel you stay in. For me, it's the full immersion and the experience. So it is not down to I stayed at this great hotel. It is also, but we also did this activity. So for the group that's going in April, yes, they're going to Cuba. Yes, they're going to stay in a really fabulous casita because I stayed there and it's fantastic. But they're also going to go on a walking tour with someone who lives in Cuba, works in Cuba, and will take you through the parts of Cuba that they don't necessarily always want to talk about. For me, part of the luxury is being close to the people, understanding who they are, what they are, having private and one-on-one experiences with these people, not the large scale, everyone hop on this boat, but really having those moments where you can have one-on-ones. They're going to have dinner in a Cuban home when they go, where the guy that takes them on their walking tour and their car tour, we go to their house and their family cooks for us and we sit and we talk and we learn more about them. We learn more about what their experience was. I mean, I just did it in November where I met him and his family is adorable. He has two daughters. They're super cute. But just meeting and hearing the story of how he met his wife and how different things are there. It's just, to me, that is also luxury because you're not going to get that everywhere. You're not going to be able to have those moments because not everybody offers those. So it is more about, when I think about like the Paris trip that we planned for next year, we have a lot of activities on that, but one of them is getting a custom hat made from a hat maker. And there's just things that I think you can put together for a trip that makes things one of a kind, that makes things unique, that gives you a real experience. We're going to make our own wine, a vintage of wine. The one woman was like, I don't even drink wine, but I'm going to gift it to somebody because I made it in Paris. Like those are things that you wouldn't necessarily put together for yourself. But when someone else is doing your trip for you, those are things that you get exposed to because you wouldn't really think of that. So that for me kind of builds into this luxury. And also just having someone to call when you have a question. There's nothing better than me paying my money and not having to worry about it. But when it does happen to come in my brain, I pick up the phone and you call. And it's me on the other end you're talking to. There's nobody else. It's just me and a couple of virtual assistants who don't answer the phones. So for me, that's that white glove. That's that, high touch that I want to be able to keep. So I'm very cautious of who I allow to be trip hosts. I'm very cautious of who I'm going to bring in, because apparently I can't do everything myself, when to touch the business, because all of that for me is luxury. My customer service. This one woman was like, "You responded to me relatively quickly." I'm like, "Well, yeah, I'm going to get back to you really quickly." To me, that's luxury, because not everybody's going to do that. So it's the overall experience, not just a 5-star hotel or, you know, something of that nature. It's or business class airplanes, but I adore me a business class seat on an airplane. It's much more than that.
Yeah, it's that from beginning to end.
Yep. And you feel comforted. You feel like there's somebody else in it with you. Even if it's a group of 18, you feel like, okay, at any given moment, if I have a question, I can pick up the phone and call somebody. Because if you were planning on your own, there's nobody to call. You're just in it.
Yep.
Figuring it out.
Yeah.
Which again is okay.
Yeah, and that brings me back to like where we started. So when you went to Thailand back in 2018 and you and your friend got there and then, things weren't how you weren't able to do at first, what you originally thought you could. Were you able to call the person who booked the trip, or what happened?
Oh, it was a mess. She actually had a trip host on the trip with us who was absolutely not helpful. That poor girl had just came from Egypt on another trip. She was burnt out and she was a college student. And you meet people, and there are some people who should not be trip hosts because they're not well traveled. She was one of those people. So she wasn't even helpful, but she wasn't answering the phone for her. So she was supposed to give her money every day to feed us because your meals were included, and she didn't have the money because the woman never put it in the account. It was a mess. So at that point I was like, if she's not going to answer the phone for you, she's definitely not going to answer the phone for me. I tried emailing her. That did not work at all. It was a mess. There was a ton of reviews right around our same time as our trip that were all basically saying the same thing. This is not put together well. Again, I think because our group was extremely small, me, my best friend, and now our friend Kiki, we were able to just kind of roll with the punches. And luckily, Kiki was a solo traveler that can roll with the punches, because she just was like, my friend was supposed to go. She dropped out. I'm still going. And that was it. She was out here. And she took to us immediately, and we took to her immediately. My mom actually picked us up at the airport, and I said, "Hey, Mom, we got to drop Kiki off at the train." And she goes, "Who is this woman? Where did you pick this person up from?" I was like, "She was on our trip." But that was one of the things that I loved. And I was like, I want so much for someone to have that experience on one of my trips. Like, this solo traveler came and now they left with people they know after this. Like, if I'm ever in a bind and need someone to take photos for me and she's not in school, she's the person I call. She was my photographer on my first group trip.
Nice.
Like, that's a connection that I was able to make. But that lady, she's also not in business anymore. I think she quickly went out of business right after that trip, thankfully.
Yeah, she should have.
Yeah, I mean, we made the most. I think the one thing she gave us that was amazing was a tour guide for 8 hours a day. So we had an English speaking guide for 8 hours a day who was just with us.
Oh, yeah.
And so like she was the one who was like, you can't do all this. So what on this list do you want to do? And I was like, I've never been here. I have no idea. But we're going to use our brains and figure out what it is we want to do.
Yeah.
And we made it work.
Yeah. And see, and look at you now. Look where you
I
are.
know, right? Making it work for other people. But I also felt like we just got there and the lady dropped us off 8 hours later. And we were like, so now what? We just sat there. I was like, I'm just going to get on this good old internet and see if there's someplace around here to eat.
Goodness.
And so we worked it out. I mean, me and my friend, we decided to be adventurous one of our last days there. And we were like, we're going to go back to the same place we went shopping to. Oh, it was an adventure. We got there. It was not in the same time frame. It took us a couple of rides and a tuk-tuk to get there, but we did. Yeah. We did our souvenir shopping and it was fun. But I feel like for the faint of heart, just going out there on your own sometimes isn't the best option. We made it work though. But now I kind of know what that feels like, so I can explain it. And I think that was probably the best sort of foundation I could have for the things that I've put into my business that are like staples.
Yeah.
Like everyone gets a travel guide. In that travel guide are restaurants with links. There is things to do. There are places to go. There are links to activities you can do on your free day, because I never want anyone to feel like I felt when we got off, like when our tour guide left us, we were like, and now what? I don't know. She didn't give us any more information. So I guess I'll have to find it all on my own.
Yeah, and that could be like that's a scary feeling, especially if you're like in a whole nother country, and
Mhm.
if you are a solo traveler or even with, friends, still it's very uncomfortable. But
You're just like, I don't know. And I mean, me and her, we to this day we'll go out somewhere and just be like, I don't know where we're going, but we're going.
if y'all did it in Thailand, you can do
Right.
it
That's our favorite. That's my favorite thing. I was like, listen, we made it home in Thailand, and our little van took us to one place, and that wasn't the place we wanted to go to. And then they were already gone, and we were like, so now what? we just didn't think that far ahead. We were like, oh, we'll ask this guy. No one speaks English. We worked it out.
in.
Didn't have any cash. We were like, ATM, get money. He was like, yes. Took us to a 7-Eleven, because there is always a 7-Eleven and Starbucks, no matter where you go.
Wow. Didn't know that.
Always. You will never be without a 7-Eleven, ever. Now, the snacks might not be the same,
Yeah.
but that's the fun part. I always try to have an indigenous snack to the place I'm in when I go somewhere.
Yeah. Because that's an experience in itself,
Yeah.
Really different.
I'm like, oh, what kind of chip is this?
Yeah, that's cool. And
And
so
it sounds crazy, but you should eat at a fast food restaurant when you're out of the country.
eat at a fast food restaurant.
Mhm.
Why is that?
It's always different. Like I always tell people, if you're in Jamaica, have KFC, because it's an absolute necessary thing to do. I won't touch KFC with the 10-foot pole in the United States, but I will run my mama down in Jamaica to get to the KFC. It is delicious. They cook with all the meat and the spices, and it is fresh and it is delicious. Is what KFC should always be.
Yeah.
Bali, we went to McDonald's of all places, and I think that they caught the fish in the back and made my fish sandwich.
Oh, wow.
I was like, this is fantastic. This is the most delicious fish sandwich I've ever had in my life.
Now, yeah, if I get that experience, okay, I will go to McDonald's then.
But like it's a weird thing, but I always say like there's nothing wrong with giving one a shot while you're out and about, because it is very different than what we have here. They have different things. They have fish nuggets. I was like, I didn't even know that was a possibility. But if it tastes anything like this fish sandwich, I'm gonna come back tomorrow and find me some fish nuggets. We were busy. I didn't do it, but
That's cool. So what's one piece of advice you could leave for the audience if they do want to get started with international traveling?
other than just do it, I would say if you're going to start internationally traveling, I think, and you're not used to it, using a travel agent does have its benefits. I know that I'm on a bunch of different groups, and the first thing everyone says is they cost so much money. The truth of the matter is that you probably spend way more not using a travel agent than you would if you did. But also your time is currency. So it's okay if it's your first time out of the country to use a travel agent and have them help you. Find one that other people have used and make sure they're reputable, but it's okay to use a travel agent. It takes a lot of the stress off of it. And I think the upfront research and all of that makes the idea of international travel seem impossible. But if you take that out of the equation, all you're left with is paying for and packing for a trip.
And yeah, that's really what it's better in that sense.
Right. And I'm always a big fan of I don't have a lot of time, but sometimes I have some money. So my time is really important, and so is everyone else's. So sometimes, people are the internets. Like I say, the socials will tell you you can go to Italy for $1,200, but what they don't tell you is you also have to be comfortable staying in a hostel, have to leave whenever they say you do, and also got to book your own flight. And you're not going to go to the places you think you're going to go. You're going to go to the off the beaten path places, which are gorgeous, but you think it's hard to get around in another country in the tourist areas. It's going to be even more difficult to get around in the cities that are not well known, because then they're really cultural to that place. None of those things are ever explained. They're just kind of throw out the great thing to hear. Like, you can go there for cheap. You can get there for $800. No, you can't. It's not a thing. And you're going to stress yourself out. So go ahead and use the travel agent. It's okay. We won't even tell anyone you used one. Your secret's safe with us.
So where can people find you on social media if they want to get a Black travel agent and connect with you?
So I can be found super easily. It's Black and Traveled on platforms, Instagram and Facebook, on TikTok, and that's my website. So it's Black and Traveled.
Awesome. And I'll be sure to fast enough. And I'll be sure to put that information in the show notes so people can connect with you. And I probably will reach out myself for my own travel plans.
And if anything else, follow the Instagram page. We do a ton of chit-chatting about safety and travel information. I'm going to start a live series probably, I want to say in April, because March is a little crazy for me, but just a live series around bringing on solo travelers, bringing on, other guest hosts, and just having really good travel information talks. So it's a good time to get in on the Instagram page as well.
Okay. Wonderful. Thank you so much for coming on the show today, Sabrina. I really appreciate your information and the jewels that you dropped today.
Not a problem. Thank you for having me. It's a good way to spend my day.
All right. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. And again, be sure to check out Black and Travel. The information will be in the show notes. Until next time, guys, ciao. Hey, Overcomers. Thanks for tuning in. For more information, head on over to DonnaCherie.com. If you want to find me online, I'm at I am Donna Cherie on Instagram and Donna Cherie on Facebook. Don't forget to join the Overcomers Confidence Club Facebook community. And of course, if you love the show, be sure to subscribe, rate, and review on iTunes.